I met Sara Magenheimer when she was a student, and it's really just 5 years ago, in the MFA program at Bard, and I was on the faculty. And she had come to Bard. It was a few years since she was out of school. She'd gone to the museum school in Boston. She had studied, had a BA from Tufts in women's studies and film theory. And she got to Bard with a body of work that she really felt good about and was absolutely fearless in dismantling it. And I think she took advantage of that time to question not only what she was doing and how she went about doing it, but how she saw the world and how she thought about language. And it's that kind of fearlessness that I think is really important, not just in students, but in artists. That kind of way of interrogating the world is what we look to art for. Since then, she did a residency just recently at Recess, which I'm hoping you'll tell us about. And then she had a big show at Interstate in Bushwick, which was one of my favorite shows of that season. It was so unlike things I expected from you. And it was really a terrific show, and it's still in my iPhone somewhere. But, and she's done lots of other residencies. She's shown at Triple Candy, at Pioneer Works, at Soloway, and Cleopatra's in Brooklyn. She's shown at Andrew Edlin and The Kitchen. She's shown in Czechoslovakia, in Italy, and California. And she was cited as an artist to watch by Art in America, Art Forum, and Modern Painters. So I guess we get to watch you now.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Sara. I'm really, really happy to be here, and I really want to thank Suzanne for inviting me and for such a sweet introduction, and to Tom for facilitating all of this. I'm excited to talk with you all and meet some of you afterwards. I thought, I just want this to be interesting for you guys, so feel free to interrupt me, or we'll have questions at the end, but I just want this to be relevant and interesting to you. So I'm going to talk about my work, but I also have a couple things I brought. I made this list of good things about being an artist that I want to throw in here somewhere, because it's hard to be an artist. And recently I was like unconsciously making a lot of, I just realized this isn't playing. We'll just leave this up for a second. So sometimes being an artist is really hard. So I made this list of good things about it that I can revisit, and we can add to it together to remind me why I do this, what I like about it. And yeah, there's a couple other things I want to share with you that sort of will run parallel to my work. So I'll just start with a little autobiography, I guess. This is my brother, Eric. This is the day he became a citizen. He was adopted. He was born in Korea. I have another adopted brother who's also Korean. And my grandmother, she's no longer alive. She was an Italian, Spanish, and French teacher at a South Philadelphia high school for girls. I'm from Philly, and I have, like, my mom's side is Southern, South Philly, Southern Italian kind of people. And my grandma was really interested in embracing and passing along her Italian heritage, which, she was born in 1913, so, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, that was not that cool. People were really assimilating. And in contrast, my dad's side, who was from Northeast Philly, they were all like Polish, German people, but they kind of just like merged into one. Like, no one talked about whether they were Polish or German. It was just kind of that general thing. And I remember my dad saying that his dad changed his birthday to be like close to when his friends' birthdays were. Like there was just so much pressure to assimilate. And so it was funny to have these two sides together. But anyway, so I'm just bringing this up in terms of, like Suzanne mentioned, I'm really interested in language and the sort of slippage of signs and arbitrariness of certain meaning assignations to linguistic signs, but also sort of cultural gestures. So we did a lot of stuff growing up. Oh, also I should mention my aunt, my mom's sister, adopted 3 kids, one from Guatemala, one from Vietnam, and one from Bulgaria. And so like our like Christmas and Thanksgiving were just like, you know, really, and everyone was celebrating everyone's culture all the time. So it was like a lot of like, you know, a shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then also like my brothers had all these Korean, you know, ritualistic garments, and we did a first birthday ritual, which is really, does anyone know about the Korean first birthday ritual? Yeah. There's a hanbok, which is the outfit, and there's all these symbolic objects on the table, and the baby you place them before the baby, and they go to pick one, and it says what they're gonna become. So it's really exciting. Yeah, like there's a knife, there's like some really heavy stuff. There's a book, there's a pile of rice cakes, which like my mom made from a recipe book, and then they were like really terrible. She was always making stuff that was like closely approximating what she thought a Korean mom should do, but she had no idea, because it was like there were like no Korean people where we lived actually, so she was figuring it out. So anyway, so I think that spirit of just like, I don't know what to call it, like optimistic appropriation or something, like really does, you know, unconsciously end up in my work. Everyone's like reenacting their childhoods all the time, whether they like to or not. So anyway, that's something. So yeah, I guess just going off of what Suzanne said, I did enter BARD ready to dismantle my work, and partially that was because I had taken like a 7-year break in between undergrad and grad school, and during that time I was in a band, actually 2 bands, and I was touring a lot, and I really wasn't a part of the art world at all, and really came back to it after. I always thought of myself as an artist, and I had been making concurrently with being in the band like a whole body of video work and things, and I was showing here and there, but I was not really living in New York actually. I was traveling a lot, and then I lived in California for a little bit, and then, you know, so in terms of just being a part of like a real New York-centric art conversation, I felt like a huge outsider, and in some ways, maybe that freed me up. I don't know. It made me feel like just very curious and open to what people were doing. So one of the first things I made, let's see, yeah, when I was kind of making, after this kind of shift, was this little short video. It's only 1.5 minutes long. So maybe I'll just play it. Yeah, so that piece was one of the first things that helped me kind of re-engage or I don't know, kind of open up a new mode of working, where I was kind of treating sound and language as almost objects and kind of engaging with video in this way that changed frame rates and just kind of broke everything down and built it back up. And yeah, when I think of that piece, which is like, it's over 5 years old, but I was really interested in that shape of Mickey's head just being like 3 O's or 3 zeros or something, 3 circles, which I think a lot of artists are. I mean, there's so many people who engage with Mickey Mouse. But yeah, I was also thinking about how it's very easy to still recognize Mickey and read him as a signifier, whether he's 3 O's or, you know, a Zuni bolo tie charm, or, you know, however he manifests. He's like abstracted in a lot of ways, but he still reads as Mickey. And yeah, so this piece I made a little bit later. I was also kind of simultaneously working with, okay, that's gonna be, I'll just talk over it. This is part of a series of videos called Becky and Sadie, and I invited 2 friends named Becky and Sadie to play these characters, but then I also had other friends play the roles of Becky and Sadie too. So I was thinking about interchangeability, treating these women as objects, questioning the nature of objects, sound as an object, kind of disrupting a lot of modes of reading. I was thinking about clay and ceramics a lot too. Here's another piece I made with them where I asked them to act like they were in a band, but their instruments were fruit and vegetables mostly. And I was also like concurrent with this work and the last one, like trying to figure out some sculptural things. I was making sculptures and I was like, you know, kind of doing this in my studio, like rearranging things, having these elements and then rearranging them and trying to figure out like, is this done? Is this a composition? So I kind of wanted to have them like acting that out. Like, is this a sculpture? Or is it an instrument, or is it temporary, or what is it? Is it useful? Is it a failing? What's going on? I was also really interested in structure and rules and like, what are the rules to this thing? Like I like when I'm as a viewer like on the outside of that, like, and I can tell there is some kind of logic, but I don't totally understand it, and I really love that gap in between the sort of internal logic and the sort of speculative logic. And I like that you see them kind of make up a game and then change the rules halfway through, because that's what I'm doing. I basically had them act out like what it means to be an artist or something. Okay, let's see. I'll play an excerpt of this next video. So this video was made like around the same time, a little bit later, using the text of Ada Byron. Do you guys know who Ada Byron is? She's Lord Byron's daughter, and Tilda Swinton plays her in a movie. She's also known as Ada Lovelace. Yeah, she is known as the mother of computer programming. She was a real genius and kind of invented rudimentary computer programming language using Charles Babbage's early computing machine. So I came across this letter that she wrote to her mother, kind of talking about how it felt to discover the power of her intellect. So this video is kind of a diptych. The first half is this kind of more pastoral thing, where I have this tuba player playing these like English standards. And then this kind of, you'll see, but it devolves into, I ask her to just play the lowest sound that she can play on the tuba. So I kind of wanted her to just like break down physically, like to the lowest sound that she could do. And that leads into the next part where I'm like voicing Ada Byron's words. I'll just play like another minute of it or something.
Just play whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Confide in you. I believe myself to possess a most singular combination of qualities perfectly fitted to make me preeminently a discoverer of the hidden realities of nature. The belief has been forced upon me, and most slow have I been to admit it even. First, owing to some peculiarity in my nervous system, I have perceptions of some things which no one else has.
All right, we'll stop that one there. So, yeah, that piece also is so much about the voice, and maybe now is a good time. Let's see. I made some notes on voice that I wanted to share with you guys, because I was, oh yeah, we can, sorry, hold on. Maybe we can watch this other, a little bit of this other, oh gosh, this other video. But yeah, so that first video, the one we just saw, One Vast Focus, was definitely a turning point just in terms of really figuring out how to engage with my literal voice and also an imaginative voice, and using someone else's words, which is something that since then I've done in a lot of different ways. Sorry, having a hard time. I want to play this other video for you guys. Hold on. Oh, actually, this might be playing. It starts out with a lot of black. Maybe I'll just be patient. I'll just talk until it interrupts me. But so, yeah, so I have since that video been actually writing a lot of scripts, and this one that hopefully is playing is an example of the first time that I really crafted a script, and I had two computer voices read it instead of use my own voice, and since then I've used actors to read or perform things, or I've hired friends or family. I never pay my family, but hired them. But yeah, so I'm really interested in the voice and sort of, you know, what are the qualities that it can add to something? What are its limitations? What does it even mean to have a voice and use it or not use it? How does a voice actually highlight silence? What does silence mean in the context of spoken word? All right, I think this is not playing. I have another way I can show this to you. Okay, so I'll just show part of this. This is called 7 Signs That Mean Silence, and I've screened it, and I've also shown it as an installation. So I'll show you some of the video first, and then show you images of the installation. But yeah, so it's a conversation between two people who
What is it?
Voiced by computers.
It looks like it's missing most of its body.
It's definitely a piece of something.
Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's a new kind of thing and that's the whole thing.
And maybe it's alive. It's just very, very slow.
Yes, maybe it's a type of thing we've never seen before. Do you think objects each have their own unique rhythm?
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes. Yes.
What is the rhythm of a plain white t-shirt?
What is the rhythm of a t-shirt that says Super Mom and has a grid of 4 pictures of Snoopy performing various jobs?
What size is it?
Large.
SNOOPY Super MOOM.
This movie is too much. We need an interlude.
Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear a word they're saying, only the echoes of my mind. People stop and staring. I can't see their faces, only the shadows of their eyes. I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain, going where the weather suits my clothes, banking off of the northeast winds, sailing on a summer breeze, skipping over the ocean like a stone.
Wow, wow. Sorry. We got disconnected. I don't know what happened.
Nobody ever knows what happened. It's dark. I can't see.
Blink your eyes. Blink your eyes. Blink your eyes.
Oh wait, I see something. It's Kate Moss getting into a helicopter. Where are my eyes?
Here. Aha!
If political regimes are father figures, what kind of dads are they?
Okay, so it goes on and on for a while, but they go to a protest and they kind of wonder about what these signs that they're seeing are, and they're symbols for silence, and they kind of try and interpret everything. So I don't think we have time to watch the whole thing right now, but I was excited about that piece just because a lot of reasons. It just like I realized that here's it shown as an installation too. There's some of the objects that are referenced in the video, and some that aren't. And I printed the script as a booklet, and I gave it away to people too, so they could see it. And here's the T-shirt that was being talked about. This is part of a sculpture called Zen Snoopy Table, which was 8 feet by 8 feet. It's pretty big, and sort of interested in some of the themes that came up in the video, but exploring them in physical space, kind of visually punning the way language is punning, and thinking about. I found this T-shirt really fascinating. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just a silly T-shirt, but I was just like, super mom. Like, I didn't know Snoopy had a gender, and then it was a mom. But then also, like, in these 4 pictures, You can kind of see like Snoopy's like baking, and then a chauffeur, and then like I think a nurse and a lawyer maybe. So it's sort of like still gender neutral, but like performing this super mom, like it's like an 80s like mom. I don't know. There's just like a lot in there. I felt like. So I was trying to unpack it and like using packing peanuts literally. I get, you know, just like really get into those puns. But yeah, so I was thinking about some of these things, and you know, you saw that fake hair in the other video. A lot of this stuff is props in another context. So it's hard to pin it down. But I guess before I move on, this is another show I did at Cleopatra's Gallery. It was a 2-person show with Sadie Laska, so she made those paintings on the wall and stuff. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to add about the video, 7 Signs That Mean Silence. I did feel like it was an exciting way to try some other things with voice. So I did that little singing interlude, and but then, you know, it's just funny, like, you know, I guess maybe this is a good moment to like think about the voice. So maybe I'll read you these notes on voice that I just wrote. Because it's like, it's all my voice, right? Like everything. But when you write a script, you have these characters that are supposedly speaking with their voices. So yeah, so I was thinking about how a singular voice, visual or oral, you know, can unify seemingly disparate thoughts, creating a space for new connections or tension between disparate seeming ideas. Also, the breakdown of voice into non-linguistic utterances is about the ultimately physical bodily manifestation of concepts, cognition, identity. The voice as language, but also as failure of language. The voice as language as insufficiency. Voiceover is always either extreme interior voice, the sound of thought, or the other extreme, super exteriority, the omnipotent voice of God. Voiceover as all-knowing, all-seeing, either omnibenevolent or pure evil entity. Right now I'm interested in pure evil. I'm working on a new video that was written from the perspective of an evil jellyfish that lives really far under the sea, and it's like, but he's giving this voiceover, so he's like everywhere. Voiceover is also like the viewer, because the viewer, you know, you can't see yourself. I can't see myself right now while I'm talking. The voiceover is always happening inside the viewer's head. So it's an interesting psychological space. A character gives a voiceover, and it's as if the artist, writer, director, whoever, is speaking directly to the viewer through the character, more directly than normal speech that's like in character. The voiceover as a puzzle. How does the content of this speech make meaning with this image? So you can kind of juxtapose images and language in this way using voiceover. Voiceover as producer of productive dissonance. So how does the temperature, texture, color of the voice add meaning to, contradict, subvert, or reinforce what's being said? Maybe how it's being said doesn't jive with what's being said, you know, or I think some of the computer voice stuff produces that, which is why it's kind of funny. I was also thinking about the voice of the internet, specifically like Tumblr, like ask functions, or like anonymous forums. Like there's this anonymity thing on the internet to which we can ascribe a great deal of knowledge and authority. So I was thinking, like, as a culture, we agree that certain things like gold, for instance, has value, so they do, right? Their value is not inherent, like gold, like God wasn't like, cool, gold's gonna be $5 a pound, or, you know, whatever, $1 million a pound, however much gold is. But their value comes by consensus, like we all agree gold is worth this much, so it is. So it occurs to me that being asked unsolicited questions, you know, on the internet or something, allows one to practice a certain voice, the voice of authority, which exactly because you didn't invite the questions is a bit like gold. We act like the anonymous voice has value, imbuing it with value. Strangers act like you have knowledge or a valuable perspective, so then you do. But this performance made visible by the Q&A structure, which I really love, and I'll show you later. I have a video with a Q&A in it. This only affirms the value, that the value is within our ability to seek value, to see value in others or in materials. The assignation of value is somewhat arbitrary and sorry, I think there's a typo. Well, it's just contingent on our imagination and our optimism. So if we can kind of, and I kind of feel like that was happening in Seven Signs too. It's sort of like, I'm really into imagination. I feel like that's really silly for an artist to say because it's like assumed that everyone is, but I don't know. I like that. I like specifically like taking advantage of the fact that you can be creative or like or just think something up and then it kind of exists. Like I don't know if, you know, I don't think everyone likes that in that way. And then I was also thinking about The Wizard of Oz. Let me exit this. In terms of voice, and I was thinking that, you know, he was great and powerful because he was just a voice. He was this disembodied voice to which we could attribute greatness and power. His trick was to get his audience to find what they were seeking inside themselves. He said, "I'm a very good man, I'm just a terrible wizard," when they found out that he was just a guy. But I like that he's just like, he's this voice that kind of just leads us back to ourselves. You know, and then just sort of like the voice as a way to color language as sort of like an affective, emotional gesture. You know, the tone of it or the pace of a voice, or, you know, if you're whispering or if you're screaming, you know, it can really color language, obviously. And the last thing on my list is the voice as a slippery snake, sliding between meaning, and sort of demonstrating slippage of meaning, like, which we see all the time in like rap or like old school scatting or like stream of conscious poetry and things like that. Okay, so move on back to this show. So yeah, so back there in the back in the nook was the video One Vast Focus you saw with the tuba player, and so that was happening back there. And then I made these big collages I called Sunroom 1 and 2. They're sort of the largest scale collage I'd worked on that far, and I really wanted them to be these planes. And this is a sort of series of sculptures that I was making where I was trying to kind of, rather than have that kind of chaotic, discursive 8-foot monster, I kind of wanted them to be a little more compact and kind of within themselves contain that kind of discursivity where it's like an abstracted blob kind of thing, but it's also referring, it's like holding up a sign literally and kind of referring to something else that's sort of reflecting back on itself. And I call them the extras. I was sort of thinking about how, you know, extras in movies are kind of propping up the movie, holding the picture in a way. And let's see. So this was in the window. So Cleopatra's is on the ground floor. It's a storefront gallery in Greenpoint. Have any of you guys been there by any chance? Yeah. So, you know, like on the street, there's actually, I think it's still there. At this time there was a travel agency across the street. So I wanted to, and they had a monitor in their window like this that was always showing places people could go. So I kind of wanted to have a video in the window too, that would be playing all the time and kind of just advertising something else, some, you know, non-commercial thing, but it was in that kind of commercial language. So I can just have it on while I talk about it. There's actually no sound. So yeah, even though this doesn't have sound, I was also thinking about voice, because I had kind of written this script that's happening on the bottom as a way, as a collage, as a found language collage. I wrote some of it, I invented some of it, but a lot of it I collected. And writing is a really big part of my practice, and I write like all the time, but I also kind of borrow and steal language all the time and kind of mold it into something. So I don't know if you guys, I use this program called Evernote. Does anyone use it? I'm really kind of evangelical about it. I really love it. I have like a zillion notes, and it works well for me because I am very associative in how I work, so I can just fill it up with different things that I notice or something, and then I can just do a search for a term like, you know, voice, for instance, actually, literally, and then I, you know, had made all these notes and kind of compiled them into one thing. So it allows me to work really organically. So that's how I work to sort of compile like all this language into one thing. Maybe while this is playing in the background, I'll just say, how are you guys doing? Is everyone okay? Okay. I was thinking about what are some good things about being an artist, and I think I said this, like it's like so hard, I feel like, to be an artist. And like I think when you're younger, you know, maybe you think it's gonna be one way, and the reality of it is different. And it can get really tough. So yeah, I made this list because I find it to be challenging. You know, recently I was thinking like, why did I do this? Yeah, I was in like a dark place, and I was like, why did I drink the Kool-Aid? Like, I could have done so much with my life. But I do love it, and but I had to remind myself of why. So yeah, I wanted to share this list with you. If you want to add anything, shout it out. But here's some things I personally really love about being an artist. Freedom, period. You make new friends because you go out, you circulate, your ideas also circulate. So also your friendships are kind of based on things you really care about, which is actually really great. And kind of the opposite, I feel like people criticize the art world for being kind of superficial and stuff, and I don't have that experience at all. Like, I find that my friends are just like so invested in what they care about, and that's such a great way to connect with someone. It's an active process. It's necessary to stay engaged in things in order to keep making art that interests you, so you really have to just stay active. You stay interested in your life beyond your immediate scope of things, like things outside of your friend zone or your comfort zone or your immediate community. You stay interested in like the world at large, including immaterial things. You stay interested in the immaterial world, which is really valuable because the material world is, you know, as they say, temporary. Having a robust inner life helps when the shit hits the fan and you lose something or someone or all your things, as can happen. This is a Nicki Minaj quote. "All these bitches is my sons," which I don't mean in, she means it like, let me show you how it's done kind of way. But I think, I like to take it really literally. You guys can tell I'm basically like Amelia Bedelia. But like, as in like, you make so many things that you love as an artist. Like, you are giving birth. You're like having a lot of sons almost, and daughters. You know, and so you make these things you love, they come from your heart, they're a part of you, and then they go out into the world, and you don't necessarily see them all the time. You kind of lose sight of them. And they accumulate in the world. Your ideas, your, you know, physical manifestations of your ideas accumulate. And the more there are, the greater chance you have of kind of running into your son. So I think you have more compassion for everyone you meet because you're kind of doing this process over and over. And like, you know, you're continually like putting yourself out there. I think anything that increases your ability to be compassionate also increases your ability to see beauty and connect with others, and therefore it deepens your sense of humanity in yourself. This makes you a better artist. It's a really good cycle to be involved in. And part of this creative cycle is that because you can see, you know, quote, beauty, whatever that means to you, in everything, potentially everything becomes useful. Even abject, disgusting, or incredibly painful experiences. So that's pretty great. This helps give your life meaning, and it gives you a sense of empowerment and control in your most vulnerable moments. You feel empowered to risk exposing these vulnerabilities, these crucial elements of your human struggle to others, making your art more meaningful and more powerful. It is like a vicious cycle of good things. Being an artist is a good way to practice keeping your eyes open, and this enables your powers of observation to grow stronger. And it lets you see yourself and your other people, your others, in greater detail, more honestly, with more truth. As an artist, you have permission to notice ephemeral things, or anything, really. But specific things related to your practice that other people might consider unimportant. So you get to give yourself permission. You know, other people are like hustling to work, and you're allowed to just stop and like stare at this weird upside down chair, or you know, whatever, something on the street, which other people maybe don't let themselves do. You can have a deeply personal experience as well as a public one with the same set of ideas, which I think is a really interesting way to navigate the world too. Like I'm like alone working on this thing, and it has all these different meanings and associations to me. But then I get to play it like on the street and talk to the, you know, random Polish person in Greenpoint who walks by and is like, "Is this a travel agency?" You know, or you know, they say something about it, or even just my friend says something about it. So I like that. There's just a couple more. Risk is its own reward. It's necessary to take risks to be an artist. That's not necessary in other jobs, necessarily. And I don't know. I think it makes your life better to have to take risks constantly, right? Like, no one wakes up and like decides. Like someone the other day was like, "Oh, I have to move. It's the worst." But I guess the silver lining is like it's making me clean up all my junk, and that's really great. And that's like the only time you do that, right? Like, you don't wake up and you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna wreak havoc on my life today." That sounds great. So you know, it's kind of good to build these things in, right? You have to take risks. Like, your work will look safe if you're playing it safe, if you're not pushing yourself. And then, you know, also just thinking about being an artist as a job, it's part of the job description to question the very nature of the job, and make and break your own rules. And then just lastly, it's an umbrella for anything you can think of doing, like literally anything, which I guess dovetails back to the first one, which is freedom. But yeah, you can basically kind of do anything, and it can be part of your art practice. And I think that's kind of awesome. Anyway, yeah, so I made this other video that was shown on this monitor in this show. That is not mine, just this video. And this piece, which is a bunny vase and a bunny cloud, and this is the title. Kind of thinking about, again, this sort of slippage between signifiers and finding things in the natural world versus creating them and these things like that. So yeah, this is a video. A little quieter. This I showed on that monitor, and then also in the next slide in a different way. I'll just show you a part of it, but I made this in my studio, and I was really trying to engage with these objects and sound itself as an object. And there's very little voice in this, actually, and very little language at all. Maybe I'll just talk over it a little bit. You might recognize that hand from another sculpture. Things kind of just, you know, bleed into one another. But I was also thinking a lot about video itself, and like, it's funny, until this, I was like, this is really not that effect heavy, but this is me like using special effects. Like, I don't use a lot of like editing tricks, or, you know, I keep it pretty simple. I like shoot, and I don't do a lot of manipulation of the like digital file. But in this, I really wanted to kind of blur like the lines between video being manipulated and then how you can manipulate these materials with your hands. Then I showed it in Chicago, and I also made these collages around that time. So I made, this one's called Your Name Stays the Same, Objects Around You Change. And I did a residency where they had a letterpress. Has anyone ever worked with letterpress before? Yeah, it's so fun. I love it. And I'd never done any printmaking or anything, so I was really like just excited. And coming off of making that video too, it was really great because I could, you know, you set the type. So it's really like it's a really physical process, and you're almost creating like a landscape of text, or, you know, these, what do you call those things? Dingbats? That's like a tech term. I don't know, whatever these other things are, shapes. You kind of arrange it all, and then you can kind of rearrange it and mess with it. So I made a ton of prints, and I still have a lot of them that I'm kind of messing around with. This one says add a mark, and I was doing things where I would like photograph something and kind of just collage it on top. And then, yeah, and this is the show at Interstate that Suzanne mentioned, which was about a year ago. The space has 2 floors, and I was really interested in this upstairs space as a kind of discursive space, kind of like bouncing between materiality of, you know, clay and these balls, and I'd kind of set up all these balls, these little guys hanging from the ceiling as a way to, let's see if I can, yeah, you can kind of see they're all in like sort of similar, they kind of made a line horizontally through the space, and they were set so that they were kind of basically in someone's sight line, so you kind of choose to stand right where one would kind of be at your eye level, and and either look at a thing with that in your way or not. And those balls are actually a tool that you can, I don't know if anyone's like parents have a suburban garage, but you can kind of hang these balls and it tells your car when to stop driving so you don't go into your house. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to play with that functionality of that. I just thought it was a kind of a funny way to direct people's bodies in the space and kind of a gesture towards like, stand here, or just disregard it. And it's like this mini painting hanging in the room. Here's another sculpture. I called this "A Tree I Gaze Up Into Flattens When I Walk Up a Mountain and Look Down on It," which is a line from a Susan Howe poem. I really love Susan Howe. I'm such a big fan. And I'm a big fan of poets and poetry in general, and I feel like that's secretly like who I am in my soul or something. This is called Choir Practice After Adoration of the Mystic Lamb, and it was inspired by a Jan van Eyck mural that I saw in Ghent, which depicts a choir singing, and they're singing in such an exaggerated way, and it's really funny. Is anyone interested in art history? Do you know Van Eyck? Do you know how he painted? Yeah, so his faces are really kind of cartoony, and they all actually kind of look like the same face, but in this painting they're making different, like they're kind of straining to hit notes, and he was really trying to kind of be demonstrative about what note they were singing, so you could almost hear the choir if you kind of imagined, okay, that's clearly the soprano because she's making this like really painful face. And so that seemed really funny to me, like how genuinely and how hard he was trying to convey a sound. And so I was kind of thinking about that here. You know, I have this Tibetan singing bowl and this ball and this brass, and also thinking about brass, drawing a line with brass and having this bowl, and kind of like a kind of futile demonstration of how a sonic aspect of this situation could happen. This is another letterpress thing that is a typo, but it says the improbable short circuit between language and liquidity. And here's one of these collages. And these basketballs I actually used to paint on these painted collages. So I kind of rolled them all over and then hung them up. And then, yeah, in the basement was where I showed this video called 7 Signs That Mean Silence, which is the last video I'll show you guys. And we can, if there's time, I could play it in its entirety. It's a little over 10 minutes. How does that sound? Okay. But maybe before we do that, I'll read you this new manifesto I wrote. Because every couple years I write a manifesto for myself, which I never share at all. So I just thought it might be fun to share it with you guys. But it's really just kind of notes to myself about my own process and like what I want to focus on right now, and kind of my own attitude towards my work. Manifesto is a little bit of a joke. It's not like what I think everyone should do, or you know, how we're going to change the world through art or anything like that. It's really just like about, it's kind of self-helpy. And I change them all the time. But right now, this is sort of what I'm thinking. So here it goes. I'll read this and then we'll watch the last video. Get the flow going. Spend time on things that feel good, give you energy, feel interesting, not like homework. Outsource only the aspects of the work that stop the flow. Act as logs in the stream, diverting resources or energy and weakening momentum. Outsourcing should not be the default. Otherwise, you're more like a business than an artist. Like viruses, capitalist modes of production carry and reproduce their own values. Industrial modes should be used to intentionally add meaning to the work. I really feel hung up on this idea right now that like so many artists right now are outsourcing or hiring people to do things. And I don't think it's 100% like bad, or I'm not judging it, but I do think that it means something to do that. And right now I pretty much make everything totally myself, and I do want help. It's not that I don't want help in certain ways, but I want to just be really intentional about that, because I don't want the default to be that like, I think your work won't, my work won't look as much like mine if my hand is less in it. So I think it's important to figure out what kind of help you can get that'll still really help and make it look like you. So stay the course in the search for new forms. All art is a search for its appropriate form. So don't get distracted by, quote, logs disguised as opportunities that get in your way, actually, or block the flow. Leave the analysis to those who love analyzing. Let yourself create without understanding cognitively all the meanings your work engenders. Allow a real moment of reflection, though, and analysis and cognition post-creation. Give as little information as necessary. Each gesture, image, sound contains many associations. Leave room for them to breathe and for the viewer to breathe within the parameters you establish with every move you make. Welcome the viewer into the work, which is your playground, and invite him or her to enjoy their stay. Not everyone will want to do this, which is fine, because the playground is really kind of for your inner life. If you enjoy staying in the playground, though, others will too. If you hate the playground, stop playing there. Sometimes you create your own hell. You're like, I have to stay, I have to figure it out. And then sometimes you're just like, no, I made this up, so I can stop making it up right now. Question all established conventions. Throw out the ones that limit your flow, the logs in the stream. Keep only the conventions that permit faster flow, aka maybe titles are useful, or credits, or pedestals, or whatever. It's okay to use an armature that helps your ideas be more articulate. Solitary confinement has been proven to cause permanent brain damage and emotional trauma. Do not subject yourself to toil in compulsory isolation unless it aids the flow. Working in the studio, quote, can happen anywhere that helps the flow, which I have to remind myself of, because I tend to be really, like, I was raised going to church every Sunday. I can be like really like self-flagellating and be like, just go back to the studio and like work harder. And sometimes that's really damaging. Like sometimes you just need to let yourself be out and trust that work is happening in the background. There's all the I mean, you guys should be in the studio all the time. What else? Poetry and revolution go together. Using tools of daily life, language, technology are my preferred methods of détournement. Know what you're asking. Identify fear and blockages and seek inroads through. Do not fear being too late for something. Try your best not to judge your impulses or sources from which you seek answers. Okay, so I'm gonna play slow zoom, long pause now. It's 13 minutes. This is another script I wrote. I wrote a lot of the text. I also used some quotes from other places, or I paraphrased some things I was reading at the time. For instance, this book on linguistics. I don't know, there's like when the bird comes up, there's like a sentence that I paraphrased from that. It was called, it's about the Kaluli tribe. It's called Sound and Sentiment. It's about conveying emotion through language, and how this tribe, the Kaluli, they, in their language, which was, I might be butchering this a little bit, but it's tonal, and their speech patterns mimic the way the birds sound in the jungle around them, and the way the jungle, the birds convey emotion is also evident in the sound of the Kaluli language. Anyway, I was interested in emotion and voice. So I hired a woman to she was a voice actor, and I hired her to read the script or act the script out. So again, this is like an example of kind of having one voice embody a multiplicity of voices. Yeah, that's all I need to say. It's 13 minutes long.
I'm alone in a plain white room. I miss you so much, everything hurts. Even my skin. The membrane between the inside and outside of my body vibrates with pain and confusion of not knowing where to be if not next to you. Skin pulling in all directions at once, nearly drawing and quartering me. My eyes hurt from not looking at you for so long, and instead having to look at people and objects I find much less attractive. My entire inside hurts because my heart is sinking lower and lower, the longer I go without seeing you. It's pulling my other organs down with it. Everything inside me wants to sink down into the earth and begin to decompose. My body wants to become dirt, but I'm still alive. I don't need you, I don't need you, I don't need you. I want you so bad, you know? I cry all the time for no reason. Is this fair? Do I feel afraid? Fear the bag someone left behind on the subway. Fear the idea that you might not be worried enough about things and maybe have forgotten to worry about something that might harm you. Fear unintelligibility. Fear ambiguity in general. Make sense all the time. Stay coherent. Don't fall apart. Keep it together. Lately, I've been thinking that we should actually be much more afraid. That we aren't afraid enough. That we should terrorize our own hearts with the idea that our petty, buzzing anxieties about misplaced backpacks and people we don't know have been distracting us from that real fear, that absolute horror that is the wilderness of our own ununified schizophrenic hearts. I've been thinking that it is our human task to embrace that heavy boulder and roll it up the hill, only to watch it roll back down, narrowly avoiding being crushed by the weight of it, and do it again, over and over, until we can see the terrible wild and say something, and then keep doing it, until our pretend world of coherent images dissolves around us, and all that is left is the beating pulse of blood in our ears, and the throbbing of our measly human genitals. We should be afraid of living our brief blink of a life on this planet, under the thin veil of made-up convention, rather than blowing that fiction up and telling the scary, messy, complicated truth in the harmonious polyphony and dissonant cacophony of voices that shoots out like fire from each singular starving mouth. Q. What are you up to in your spare time right now? A. Getting laid. Q. Getting laid? A. Yes. I am. Q. What is your favorite letter of the alphabet? A. U, but upside down. I also like O, because it's the same coming and going. I was out late last night. Q. What did you do? A. I went to a club called Wiggle Room. Q. I don't like going to clubs. A. Why not? Q. I always feel so alone. A. Oh, maybe you're going for the wrong reasons? Q. Why do you go anywhere? A. When I need a loan, I go to the bank. Q. Tell me about how you eat when you're alone. A. I bought $15 worth of fruit and ate it all within 5 minutes. Q. How old does an object have to be considered timeless? A. It depends on what it looks like. If it's a rock, it's already timeless, because you can't tell how old it is by looking at it. If it's a woman, she's in her 20s, but she looks like a beautiful woman. Q. How long are you? A. About 20 minutes on average. Q. How do you make nothing? A.
Yes. 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 Yes.
We two do not look alike, but we are classified as the same because of the way we sound. The sound of our speech is all that we are. Cake, 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 cake. I like this piece of cake. I'm not sure if I will like the other pieces. How can I assume they all taste the same? I must taste every piece before recommending that my friend have some. Cake, 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 three, cake, three, three. Slow zoom, long pause. We're taught to think of sex as an object of desire, and so the satisfaction of that desire as something you have to get. But in reality, sex is nothing like an iPad. Sex isn't an iPad in exactly the same way that being alive isn't a substance. There is no essence of life that fills your body, but which is missing from that of a corpse. Everyone used to think that there was something you could distill out of blood or fraction off of breath, and that the presence of this substance in medicines was what lent them their power to cure. Now, of course, we know that life is not an essence you could isolate into a product, but instead that it's a process. Same with sex. Fucking is change. Sex is the chance to remake yourself on the anvil of nature, to remake yourself in whatever shape pleases you. It's our opportunity to unlearn the lessons we didn't know we were receiving. Every orgasm is a hammer blow, and beneath the sparks you are malleable. The vulnerability of being naked with another person does not come from being close to harm, but from being close to freedom.
5. You feel so far away. I ache for your body, and over the phone I suggest we have a baby. Knee-jerk attempts at intimacy. What do I even really want? Forgive my aggressive fumbles towards your impossible arms. You feel so far away, and I haven't told you nearly everything.
6. Seven. The womb is a fictional place inside the body. We are all born of this fiction. Our birth is the confluence of language and sex, as a result of a human desire to transcribe on ourselves the story of our past and future. The word in language is half someone else's, like a newborn. Q. Sometimes I feel like a bunch of curtains. A. Then open them up. Q. What are computers? A. New drums. Q. What is a drum? A. Language. Q. What is nice? A. Ice. Q. What does every word mean? A. Specific space and time plus distance. Q. What is Q? A. An old drawing of a feeling. Q. What is exclamation? A. A feeling. Q. How do we know it's real? A. It feels real. Q. What if fake feels real? A. Then it's real. Q. What color is the sound of your name? A. Peach. Q. What comes next? A. A. Q. Can you think of a thing that itself is a symbol too? A. A. Q. Do you know anyone whose name is just one letter? A. I. Q. If your first name was only one letter, which letter would it be? A. I. Q. Have you ever seen an airplane write a word in the sky? A. They let me fly once. I wrote my name huge. Q. What was your name then? A. Cloud. I spelled it wrong. It looked like cloud.
Thanks, guys. Sure, yeah. Do you want to do questions? Yeah. Do you have any questions? Slow zoom, long pause. Yeah, the process is kind of similar in some ways. I think I always played with other people, and I think since kind of moving away from performing like as part of a band, I've learned to kind of internalize the aspects of the band that I really liked. Like there's this thing that happens in a band, like is anyone here in a band? You know, you bring something to the table, they bring other things to the table, and then you do the things, and then this other thing happens, right? Like it's like a magical, there's some kind of catalytic energy to that dynamic that creates a sound and an experience and a performance that's bigger than all of you. It's like a combination of all your energies, but it's like exponential. And I think part of the catalytic aspect is the fact that there's a lot of risk and unknowns involved. So you're like doing something and you know someone has to react in the moment, and it's similar to video in that it's time-based in that way, but so I do feel like I try really hard to internalize that process of like making a gesture and then responding to it almost as if from like another perspective or something. Yeah. There were two. One was called Flying and one was called Boom. It was like 7 years of my life, a lot of touring. It was like actually a big part of my life. Yeah, totally, directly. I mean, so like Suzanne mentioned in the beginning, like I was in like a double degree program for undergrad, so my initial experience of undergraduate study was as like a theory kind of person. Like I was majored in women's studies, but there was no women's studies department. It was all like film and literary theory, basically. So I came to art school with like a pretty intense like theory background, because I was also like a huge, like, I was really into it at the time. So I was like taking like grad level courses, and I was just like, I couldn't get enough. But then I got enough. I was like, done. And then I couldn't get up until I got enough, and I was like, please stop. And then I went to art school, and I was really excited to, you know, just turn that off and just learn. I was like doing watercolor painting at first. I was like, I just want to learn about color. And it was funny because at art school, everyone felt like they needed this theory to like buttress their work, or like there was a lot of insecurity in my peers that they were like, shouldn't we talk more about this Walter Benjamin, you know? And I was like, why pretend? Like, it just seemed like I had already done that in like a really rigorous way. So I was like, why are you guys pretending? Like, it's okay. I don't know. So I just felt, so at that time I was really grappling like in a really clear way, because also there weren't that many other people who were doing that program of study. So I felt very alone in like those, just navigating that, you know, like how do you resolve your analytical mind with your creative one? And I think a lot of artists have to grapple with that. And I think my own solution is to try and, well, almost not grapple with it actually, and just let it do whatever. And, you know, I mean, I'm a deeply like self-loathing, like insecure person at times, like in my studio. But my goal is to try and, you know, trust myself more and more, and just trust that, you know, my voice will come through. Whoops, I don't know what happened. Yeah, and that those ideas always come through. You know, what you care about always comes through, and you can always tell with your, you know, with someone, your peer or something, if they're making work and they're like, and I'm just gonna slap a little Freud on it, right? Like, it looks like they slapped Freud on it. Like, it doesn't feel that real or authentic. So I think you just don't need to worry about it, and just trust that it'll come through, and it's okay. Yeah, that's what I would say. But then, like, it's really important to like talk to people after and seek out, you know, like there is, like I still love theory, and I still love like people who, you know, are really dedicated to it. Like there are people who that's their whole thing. So like you don't have to be that guy too, in addition to being an artist, but you can seek out those people and be like, please help me like kind of break this down. But it can't all happen at once. I think that's the thing. Like there have to be these stages. Sister Corita Kent said that. Do you guys know her work? Yeah, she's a pretty amazing teacher, so I learn a lot from her. Yeah, I think when people go to grad school, they're just like ready for inviting criticism and ready for like opening up themselves to a new community. And I was just at that point. Like I was just saying, like I had a pretty intensive like 5-year undergrad experience, and I like studied Chinese. Like I was like really excited about all that those schools had to offer, and I just like took advantage of it all. And then I got like kind of burnt out on it. So, you know, I kind of needed 7 years in between to like just process what had happened. Like that was a really intense 5-year period when I was in school. So, so yeah, I think I just arrived at a moment where I was like really ready to open up again. And I really only wanted to go to Bard. Like it's so funny. Like I didn't know anyone who had gone there personally, but like I just had this feeling intuitively that it would be a really great place for me to go. And I felt so lucky that I got in, because like I said, like I didn't know anyone, like I wasn't a part of like the art scene. Yeah, I was, but I didn't know how to talk about them, and I wasn't really looking at like that much contemporary art, so I don't know. I just felt like, here I am. Like I just kind of showed up like, what's going on, guys? Like, what's everyone up to? Like, I just wasn't, I was in rock clubs every night and doing that, so I don't know. Maybe that helped, because I didn't feel like I knew everything or something. Yeah.
But it seems like your films are a synthesis of a kind of improvisational quality that comes from being in rock clubs, and another thing, which is what is it when two people talk to each other? What happens in language? Where's the slippage? What don't we understand? And what happens? I mean, where punning becomes, it's like, oh God, not that pun.
I know.
To this other thing that's about deconstructing meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the theory comes up, but it comes up as a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what I'm interested in terms of theory. I mean, I'm like kind of pragmatic, I guess. Like I never enjoyed. I mean, I was interested in Derrida, but like I was more interested in the theorists that were interested in really communicating something rather than demonstrating a kind of theoretical prowess or something. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I have a similar comment,
Yeah.
I think, to the last couple. I mean, one of the things that was most striking for me in watching and listening was, I guess I would describe it as kind of sympathetic reverberations among different topics and also different kind of postures that you had towards things. So on the one hand, the things that you said about voice, especially the interiority, exteriority, which I hadn't thought much about, which was really fascinating.
Oh, good.
But those voice comments and demonstrations sort of reverberated nicely with what you were saying about outsourcing work. So I started thinking about voice as like, it's a question about, well, how inside me is it and how outside is it and still me and so on. And then that was kind of echoing with this, your performance of being an artist with the manifesto. And so it was like, well, I'm both inside it and I'm outside it.
Right.
And I'll give you the rules as a way of showing, here I follow the rules, so I'm inside, but that I can name the rules makes me outside, and I'm giving them to you in my voice and showing you them as well. So it's like, it's sort of along the lines of what Julia and Suzanne were saying about your work has this really nice quality of like deep theoretical engagement, but that comes out in like these very kind of crystalline images and forms, which is really simple things about what is the voice and where is it from and so on. So,
well, thank you.
that's sorry, it's not a question.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like it's like what you're saying about simplicity actually like is maybe a way that I do feel like playing in the context of like punk stuff or things like that did really inform my aesthetic sensibility. Like I remember, well, I don't know if you know this band Deerhoof. Do you know? We used to tour with them a lot, and they're good friends of ours. And the lead singer, English is not her first language, and all of those people in that band, they're really brilliant musicians, but they're interested in a songwriting structure that's pretty catchy or simple, and like her lyrics can sometimes be like so simple. Like they have a song where she just says like "dog on a sidewalk" like a bunch of times, and And I remember like touring with them. Yeah, the chorus is "I saw," and then she goes back and says "dog on the sidewalk" again. And I remember just like being like in the audience one night on tour and like listening to them sing that song, and I was just like, yeah, that's why like. This, they're not a punk band, but they have a lot of affinities, and I just feel like that's the kind of minimalism I really like the kind that like is just distilled down. There's no ornamentation on that. Like, mean, their music is actually really complicated and kind of Baroque in the way it's composed, which is really impressive, and I like that a lot. But, and I mean, I have my tricks, and, you know, I'm not like trying to be like, well, it's really simple. But yeah, I like simplicity, you know, I like to have like moments where there's just like, it's kind of distilled down, and that, you know, I'm not trying to be too fancy. I don't know. Well, many have sung it. The version I know is Fred Neil. I think Fred Neil wrote the original. Everybody's Talking, that one? Yeah.
Well, you know the famous scene that it's playing during?
In Midnight Cowboy, yeah. Yeah.
So I can't hear that song without seeing the bus.
Right.
On their way to Florida.
Yeah. 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 I know. It's really cinematic. Yeah.
But it's also seeing it disconnected from the thing that you're associating with. It's part of the content and intention of what you do.
Yeah, yeah.
I asked you one thing before, which was, oh, maybe you tell us something. Was there an aspect of this that was part of your performance at Recess?
Oh, right.
Gallery on Grand Street, and they always accept people to make proposals to them to do an occupation or to have a show there, and it's a very rangy place.
Yeah, I didn't include anything in this from there just because that project that I started there is still ongoing and I haven't finished it, but it's going to be like a longer term thing just because what I did was I called this project False Alphabets, and I wrote a script, and the script is a very long monologue that is delivered in my movie by a radio DJ. And she's played by a musician, a real-life musician named Eleanor Friedberger, who used to be in a band called the Fiery Furnaces. I don't know if anyone knows her, but yeah, so she is a longtime friend of mine and a really great performer. So she played this role. Her name was DJ Angel Food, and she's kind of like a lone wolf, like kind of just talking into the ether. And her script is like an amalgam of a lot of different things. But yeah, I was researching like the radio DJ in cinema, which is like such a fun, fertile territory. Like there's such a long list of like how sound is used as almost like a character. Like the voice of the DJ is almost like simultaneously a character and like a plot propelling device and omnipotent voiceover that's almost like disembodied. I'm thinking right now of Pump Up the Volume. You guys know the DJ in Pump Up the Volume. He's just kind of narrating what's going on that hot summer day, and they keep coming back to him, but he's like always in the booth. Yeah, so I shot a lot of stuff with her and got some amazing footage. And then this funny thing happened actually with that project where she is in the process of making a record, and she, so we were doing these performances and shooting in Recess's space on Grand Street. And as kind of like the climax of the whole residency there, it was like a month and a half or something. She took my script, which was 10 pages long, and she made it into songs that she and a backing band performed for like an audience, and we shot it as part of the movie, and people were coming in off the street. It was like a really amazing night. So she's like, so one of the songs that she performed was named False Alphabet City, and it's like my lyrics and her words, and she ended up releasing it as a digital single, and it did really well. Like it got, it was on a like top 5 list in Rolling Stone with like Missy Elliott's new single and stuff. So it was like this funny moment where like that project is like not done, but like that happened, and then I made a trailer for the project that she used as a music video for that song, and like that is on the internet. And
right, that's on the website.
Yeah, that's on. I think that's on my website. Yeah. So like it's out there, but I need to kind of edit it all together into some kind of form. But that was really fun to kind of have her reinterpret this script in that way, and now it's like a digital MP3 that you can buy. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks a lot. was one of the first things that helped me kind of re-engage, or I don't know, kind of open up a new mode of working, where I was kind of treating sound and language as almost objects and kind of engaging with video in this way that changed frame rates and just kind of broke everything down and built it back up. And yeah, when I think of that piece, which is like, it's over 5 years old, but I was really interested in that shape of Mickey's head just being like 3 O's or 3 zeros or something, 3 circles, which I think a lot of artists are. I mean, there's so many people who engage with Mickey Mouse. But yeah, I was also thinking about how it's very easy to still recognize Mickey and read him as a signifier, whether he's 3 O's or, you know, a Zuni bolo tie charm, or, you know, however he manifests. He's like abstracted in a lot of ways, but he still reads as Mickey. And yeah, so this piece I made a little bit later. I was also kind of simultaneously working with, okay, that's kind of like, I'll just talk over it. This is part of a series of videos called Becky and Sadie, and I invited 2 friends named Becky and Sadie to play these characters, but then I also had other friends play the roles of Becky and Sadie too. So I was thinking about interchangeability, treating these women as objects, questioning the nature of objects, sound as an object, kind of disrupting a lot of modes of reading.
I met Sara Magenheimer when she was a student, and it's really just 5 years ago, in the MFA program at Bard, and I was on the faculty. And she had come to Bard. It was a few years since she was out of school. She'd gone to the museum school in Boston. She had studied, had a BA from Tufts in women's studies and film theory. And she got to Bard with a body of work that she really felt good about, and was absolutely fearless in dismantling it. And I think she took advantage of that time to question not only what she was doing and how she went about doing it, but how she saw the world and how she thought about language. And it's that kind of fearlessness that I think is really important, not just in students, but in artists. That kind of way of interrogating the world is what we look to art for. Since then, she did a residency just recently at Recess, which I'm hoping you'll tell us about. And then she had a big show at Interstate in Bushwick, which was one of my favorite shows of that season. It was so unlike things I expected from you. And it was really a terrific show, and it's still in my iPhone somewhere. But, and she's done lots of other residencies. She's shown at Triple Candy, at Pioneer Works, at Soloway, and Cleopatra's in Brooklyn. She's shown at Andrew Edlin and The Kitchen. She's shown in Czechoslovakia, in Italy, and California. And she was cited as an artist to watch by Art in America, Art Forum, and Modern Painters. So I guess we get to watch you now.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Sara. I'm really, really happy to be here, and I really want to thank Suzanne for inviting me and for such a sweet introduction, and to Tom for facilitating all of this. I'm excited to talk with you all and meet some of you afterwards. So yeah, I thought, you know, I just want this to be interesting for you guys. So feel free to interrupt me, you know, or we'll have questions at the end, but I just want this to be relevant and interesting to you. So I'm going to talk about my work, but I also have a couple things I brought. I made this list of good things about being an artist that I want to throw in here somewhere because it's hard to be an artist. And recently I was like unconsciously making a lot of, I just realized this isn't playing. We'll just leave this up for a second. So sometimes being an artist is really hard. So I made this list of good things about it that I can revisit and we can add to it together to remind me why I do this, what I like about it. And yeah, there's a couple other things I want to share with you that sort of will run parallel to my work. So I'll just start with a little autobiography, I guess. This is my brother, Eric. This is the day he became a citizen. He was adopted. He was born in Korea. I have another adopted brother who's also Korean. And my grandmother, she's no longer alive. She was an Italian, Spanish, and French teacher at a South Philadelphia high school for girls. I'm from Philly, and I have like my mom's side is Southern, South Philly, Southern Italian kind of people. And my grandma was really interested in embracing and passing along her Italian heritage, which, you know, she was born in 1913, so, you know, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, that was not that cool. People were really assimilating. And in contrast, my dad's side, who was from Northeast Philly, they were all like Polish, German people, but they kind of just like merged into one. Like no one talked about whether they were Polish or German. It was just kind of that general thing. And I remember my dad saying that a part of the art world at all, and really came back to it after. I always thought of myself as an artist, and I had been making concurrently with being in the band like a whole body of video work and things, and I was showing here and there, but I was not really living in New York, actually. I was traveling a lot, and then I lived in California for a little bit, and then, you know, so in terms of just being a part of like a real New York-centric art conversation, I felt like a huge outsider, and in some ways, maybe that freed me up. I don't know. It made me feel like just very curious and open to what people were doing. So one of the first things I made, let's see, yeah, when I was kind of making, after this kind of shift, was this little short video. It's only 1.5 minutes long. So maybe I'll just play it. Yeah, so that piece, his dad changed his birthday to be like close to when his friends' birthdays were. Like there was just so much pressure to assimilate. And so it was funny to have these two sides together. But anyway, so I'm just bringing this up in terms of, like Suzanne mentioned, I'm really interested in language and the sort of slippage of signs and arbitrariness of certain meaning assignations to linguistic signs, but also sort of cultural gestures. So we did a lot of stuff growing up. Oh, also I should mention my aunt, my mom's sister, adopted 3 kids, one from Guatemala, one from Vietnam, and one from Bulgaria. And so, like our like Christmas and Thanksgiving were just like, you know, really, and everyone was celebrating everyone's culture all the time. So it was like a lot of like, you know, a shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then also like my brothers had all these Korean, you know, ritualistic garments, and we did a first birthday ritual, which is really, does anyone know about the Korean first birthday ritual? Yeah. There's a hanbok, which is the outfit, and there's all these symbolic objects on the table, and the baby you place them before the baby, and they go to pick one, and it says what they're gonna become. So it's really exciting. Yeah, like there's a knife, there's like some really heavy stuff. There's a book, there's a pile of rice cakes, which like my mom made from a recipe book, and then they were like really terrible. She was always making stuff that was like closely approximating what she thought a Korean mom should do, but she had no idea, because it was like there were like no Korean people where we lived actually, so she was figuring it out. So anyway, so I think that spirit of just like, I don't know what to call it, like optimistic appropriation or something, like really does, you know, unconsciously end up in my work. Everyone's like reenacting their childhoods all the time, whether they like to or not. So anyway, that's something. So yeah, I guess just going off of what Suzanne said, I did enter BARD ready to dismantle my work, and partially that was because I had taken like a 7-year break in between undergrad and grad school, and during that time I was in a band, actually 2 bands, and I was touring a lot, and I really wasn't